What's going on, folks? Welcome to Midweek Study Hall. If it's your first time here, my name is Phillip Godfrey. If you're returning, welcome back, Bible study family. And so, Midweek Study Hall and weekly Bible study are built off of the scriptures. The foundation for this is Matthew 6:33, where here the Messiah speaking, and he tells us to seek ye first the kingdom of the Father and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. So this is the purpose. This is the reason for us doing these studies. We gather to see, seek, and serve the kingdom of the Father. Thank you so much for tapping in with us. So right now we are continuing a series of studies that we began at the beginning of the year entitled From Creation to Revelation, where we're walking through the Bible book by book and chapter by chapter. Today we'll be continuing the book of Isaiah. This is like part 7, I think, so far. We'll be continuing the book of Isaiah. Today we'll be looking at chapters 50 through 55. 50 through 55. And so let's go ahead and jump into it. All right. So on Sunday, and I'll put a link to Sunday's message, to Sunday's Bible study up here. But on Sunday, we looked at chapters 40 through 49, and during these chapters, we discussed how even through the season of captivity for the people of Jacob, the people of Judah, the people of Israel, the Father's chosen people, even through a season of captivity for them, the Father had already sent prophetic words ahead to comfort them during this season of oppression. And he actually sent these prophetic words, as we saw, he sent these things before they even went into captivity, even before Babylon was a world power of the day. And so he's already comforting his people. He's already sending them the word through the prophet that they need to help them to see that he's still with them, that there's purpose in what he's doing, and to even tell them what was going to be the sign for their captivity ending, and tell them the exact reason that got them into captivity, probably so they could stay out of captivity for the next time, right? And so, as we move into the section we're looking at today, chapters 50 through 55, this theme kind of continues from the previous study, that we see that there's a continued comfort to the exiles that is coming through the voice of the prophet. And now, with today's study, what we'll see through these, the increased aspect of it here is that salvation, the person of salvation. I always tell you that salvation is not a thing. Salvation is a person. A person is not a process. It is a person. We'll talk about that when we get over into the New Testament. But we see the increase and even the elevation. Thank you, Holy Spirit. The elevation of this message and this comfort with a promise of salvation through a everlasting an elevated servant. All right, so let's jump into that in chapter 50. And so in chapter 50, what we first see is the Father ultimately again acknowledging the reason for the exile, that the exiles had to end up in the situation that they were in. They ended up in captivity and oppression to the Babylonians. And ultimately we see that it was because of their own decisions and their iniquities. They had walked away, as we saw in the previous chapters. They had walked away from the things of the Father. They had walked away and they walked into idolatry and chose to prioritize the idols, the false gods of the land. They chose to prioritize those things over obedience to the Father. They chose to revere and respect those things rather than revering and respecting the Father, his instructions, his practices, his precepts, his judgments, his commandments, etc. And we see that in all the books really leading up to where we are now in Isaiah, but especially in the previous chapters of Isaiah as well. And so even though they were disobedient and they were disobedient and not following these instructions, we saw that the Father, Yahuwah still wanted to be their sole redeemer. He still wanted to be their place, their only point of their reverence. He wanted to be, because the text tells us that he's a jealous God. He's a jealous Father. And so we see that this is what his heart is and his nature and his desire is for his people. He wants to be the only place of comfort. He wants to be the only place of safety. And when you find shadow under his wings, he wants to be that for you. He wants to be that as our Father. And they did not allow him to do that. They did not follow up with their end of the promise there. They didn't follow up on their end of the agreement. This is an opportunity for us to ensure that we are aligning ourselves in the proper way. But because they didn't follow these instructions, they ended up in captivity. And even in their season of captivity, we continue to see the Father sending them comfort and reaffirming them as his chosen covenant people. And these chapters double down on their promises, I've already said, with a description of the servant that he will send to essentially settle the debt or redeem them or bring them back into right standing with him. This servant, he's speaking specifically through the prophet here to the people of Judah, but as we've spoken about in the book of Isaiah, is that there are immediate fulfillments of these prophecies of Isaiah, but there are also long standing fulfillments of these prophecies as well. So even though here he is speaking to specifically to the people of Judah and to the descendants of Jacob. And he's making a promise that this Messiah, or this servant who we know as the Messiah, this servant is going to redeem them back into right standing with him. The truth of the matter is also that when we align ourselves under the ways and the kingdom of the Father, then that same servant redeems us as well. And the Gentiles, or the Isles, as the text calls it, the Isles, if they are not, even though they are not of the bloodline of the covenant, that there was a grafting in process that we even saw in the last study here in the Old Testament. I know we talk about it over in the New Testament, but there's a grafting in here as well. And so, as we move into chapter 51, if we look at verse 6, it tells us that salvation is forever and his righteousness shall not be abolished. So yes, this does here speak to the fact that that the Father has a purpose, that he has a plan, and he has a way that he has set forward as right, and that way won't change. But it also means that his way of salvation, through the person of salvation, again, the Messiah, salvation is a person. It's not an event, it's not a process, it's not whatever. It is a person. The Messiah, Yahusha, he is salvation. All right. And that will not change. And the righteousness of it shall not be abolished as well. And in verse 6, it talks about also the eternal ramifications of this decision that is available through the Messiah, through saying yes to the Messiah, through following the Messiah, that there are eternal opportunities and eternal fulfillment that is made available through it. It speaks about how the heavens will vanish and the earth will go away and the people of it will go away in a similar manner. But his salvation, the salvation that he's giving them, the salvation that he's providing for his people is forever. And his righteousness, right standing, is forever as well. And so what we see here is that the Messiah as the person of salvation, but also the Messiah as the word, that's righteousness, the word as right standing of the Father, those things are eternal. And when we make decisions to follow the Messiah and follow the word, we are made decisions for an eternal outcome, an eternal placement. Does that make sense? And so no matter what is going on in the world, no matter what is going on in their season of captivity, the Father is sending comfort to his people. And as we, apply the text, we apply the principles of the text to our lives, that the Father is sending us comfort as well. He's sending us comfort as well. And so, yes, for them and the children of Jacob at this time, yes, he's going to deal with the nations and will afflict them, and they will pay for the way they oppressed his people, the way they held his people captive, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, all of those people. And even talks about like the Edomites and how they oppressed the people, that there is going to be a reckoning that will take place, and the Father will make right those things. But the bigger picture here is salvation and righteousness, and that is found in the person that we see, the servant that we see described over in chapter 53. But before we get there, this person ties into the person of chapter 3, the servant that we see in chapter 53, ties into what the plan of redemption that we see found in chapter 52. And so it's interesting to me that in chapter 52, it notes that the Father's people will be redeemed, but not with money. Why is this interesting to you, Philip? Well, it's interesting to me is because this is a shift from the traditional redemption process that we talked about previously when we look at Boaz and Boaz redeeming Ruth, that there was a process, that the traditional redemption process that took place, that required money, that required some exchange of funds, some exchange of goods, whatever it looked like for that period of time. But the Father here is telling us in chapter 52 that he is going to redeem his people without money. And this shift is confirmed also in what we talked about from Sunday. It confirmed the verses where Yahuwah said that he is going to do a new thing for his people, that he's going to make ways in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So he's saying, shall you not see it? So now what he is symbolically presenting for us is a divine shift into his kingdom, ruling and reigning in the earth in this season and in this time. So ultimately, the bigger prophetic fulfillment here, or one of them, is that the people were redeemed with blood, not money. Why? Because the kingdom of the Father is a kingdom of covenant. And how are covenants made, and how are they governed? And what is required for a covenant? Blood. And so since the kingdom of the Father is now invading and taking over the earth as part of this prophecy, there is no more need for exchange of money for redemption, because his kingdom and his process has come in and redeemed the people of the covenant with blood, and where covenant requires blood. Does that make sense? And so this kingdom, the Father's kingdom, is a superior kingdom, and his kingdom is now ruling on earth. And this is what the Bible studies are built off of, that we are seeking that kingdom first. And that kingdom is not a kingdom of this world, and the kingdoms of this world are run by what? Money. And so he's showing us that since he didn't have to use money to redeem his people, that his people are now operating at a level that is superior to the levels and the ways of this world. That's why when the text tells us to come out from among them, it wants us to come out from among the kingdoms of this world and get over into the kingdom of the Father, which is a kingdom of covenant that cannot change, that cannot lie, that cannot be shifted, and it has been redeemed. You have been redeemed then. Those citizens of that kingdom have now been redeemed through blood. Does that make sense? Is that good news to somebody? And so that was interesting to me, that we see that redemption and the confirmation of that text there. And so we won't spend much time here about talking about this redemption, but this redemption by blood required that the chosen servant, the servant that we see, that we know to be the Messiah, it required that servant to be marred more than any man, according to chapter 52 and 53. It required the servant to be marred more than any man. It required the servant to be rejected, to be despised, to be afflicted, to be smitten of the Father, to be wounded and bruised for them, for the people of Judah, which is us, that we can take when you come into the kingdom, it now speaks to you. And he went throughout all of that. That servant went throughout all of that season without opening his mouth. He went through all of it without mumbling a word, without speaking ill of any of those things. And the text goes on to tell us that he did this. The servant did this, but also the Father did this because he wanted them to be redeemed. He wants us to have an opportunity at redemption and right standing with him. And it actually says that it pleased the Father. Go read chapter 53. It says that it pleased the Father to bruise the Son. It pleased the Father to bruise the Messiah, or to bruise this servant, to bruise the Messiah, so that he, the Messiah, this servant, could be an offering for sin, and that we all didn't individually have to be an offering for our own sins. And that's good news, people. That's good news. Let's keep going. And so through this process, we see that he made them redeemed through the redemption process of the shedding of blood. He made them redeemed, and he gave them righteousness, or right standing before him. And or he brought them into, he don't say he gave, but he brought them into right standing and righteousness with him. And we see in chapter 54, verse 5, that the maker is ultimately the husband. And so he has removed that season of barrenness. He's removed that season season of singleness. He's removed the reproach that came with those things. He removed the season of them walking without him, them walking outside of his will, him walking with outside of the covering of a husband, or a covering of a father, or covering of a relationship, a covering, thank you, a covering of a covenant. He removed the reproach and the shame of those things, and those things no longer define them, because now he has redeemed them. He has made himself their covering, their husband, their redeemer, and now he is their place of comfort. He's their place of safety. He's their place of definition. Now they are called, now like we talk about the changing of names when it comes to marriage, but now they are called by his name. They are called and seen as his people because he has redeemed them through his process. Does that make sense? Hopefully, let me know in the comments if you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. It goes on to tell us in chapter 54 that just like he made a promise, a covenant with Noah, that he wasn't going to flood the earth like that again, he is just as serious about this promise here that he made, and that he made with them, that he will be their peace going forward, that he will not completely rebuke them or completely be angry with them. Now, this does not mean that there are no consequences for the decisions that they continue to make in the future. No, but what this means is that the Father will not completely wipe out his people for the decisions that they have made then or even now in the time period that he's prophesying this, or he's speaking this through the prophet, because we saw previously that the Father said you deserve to, Moses was interceding for them, and the Father's like, no, they deserve death, they deserve to be wiped out, but I'm not gonna do that to them because of the covenant, because of the agreement that I had with Abraham, because of Moses and how you are standing in front of me. I'm not gonna give them what they deserve. And here he's doubling down on that. But we see that this doesn't mean that there are never any troubles for the people of the kingdom. No, it tells us at the end of chapter 54, it talks about how no weapon formed against you shall prosper. We quote this. We quote these verses. It talks about that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Well, what does that mean? It means that weapons are going to form, and weapons are going to form against you. But the foundation that we can stand on is that those weapons are not going to prosper. Even though they form, they're not going to prosper. And that this truth, that the weapons won't prosper, this truth is a heritage for his people. What is a heritage? A heritage is an allotted portion. What does this mean practically, Phillip? A heritage means that I should be able to look out over the earth and know who the Father's people are, because there were weapons formed against them, and those weapons have yet to be able to prosper. That even though there are systems, and even though there are processes, and even though there are governments, and even though there are whatever treaties or whatever against these people, that is not prospering in their life. And the same is true in your and my life. That's how you know if you're in the will of God, that you are in a season that you shouldn't have still been in that long. You shouldn't have still made it. You shouldn't still be here. You shouldn't still have a testimony. But your heritage is one that, because, oh, I am excited, because the weapon has been formed against you, it can't prosper, because your heritage is a kingdom. Your heritage is in the Father. Your heritage is in the redemption of the blood of the Messiah. And because of that, you have the truth. You have the foundation that even if there's a weapon formed against me, it's not going to prosper. That was for somebody, man, because I got excited out of nowhere. All right. And so because of this, because there's no weapon formed against you that shall prosper, because the Father has redeemed them and put them and remembered his, and made a strong promise to them, essentially like a covenant with them, that he's not going to completely remove them or rebuke them, that there will be peace, that there will be a people of peace, that even in the struggles and even in the chastisements and all those things, that he will be their place of peace. When we move into chapter 55, we see there an urgency. That's why the study today is titled The Urgency, because we see that there's an urgency as which these things should be sought after, that we should seek him while he may still be found. So this is showing us that there is an expiration on the opportunity of seeking the Father. Just like, again, the foundation for these studies is seek ye first the kingdom of the Father. And here Isaiah is showing us that there's an expiration date on that. We don't know when that expiration, whether that's your expiration or the expiration of this world. But there should be an urgency. We should be seeking while there is able to be found the Father, while the Father is still able to be found, while the Redeemer is still able to be found. We should be seeking. We should be seeking. And then it goes on in chapter 55, it goes on to talk about how it's not about the money. You don't need that. You don't need that in this kingdom. It's not about your labor. You don't need that in this kingdom. It's about hearkening diligently unto the Father. And how do we do that? By keeping his word, seeking his kingdom. And if we do that, if we align ourselves with him and his ways and the things that please him, if we do that, that there's an everlasting covenant that we can stand on and receive. But there has to be an urgency. And this was what was like highlighted to me as I prepare, is that we have to have an urgency in seeking the Father while he may still be found. Seeking him doesn't come from a pastor teaching you or even me teaching you or anything like that. It doesn't come from watching videos. It doesn't come from those things. It comes from knowing for yourself that what the promises of this word are true, and they're not only true, but they're truth, and that if you stand on them, you will see them. One of the biggest aspects of this season of my life is that I told the Father, and I feel led to share this. I told the Father that I have to know that this works for me. I have to know that your word is truth and that it works for me. And if I don't know that, I won't tell them that. And so I see that fruit in my life. But you have to make some type of decision. You have to, whatever that looks like for you, you have to know for yourself, not from what anyone else told you, is that this word is truth and the Father has breathed it and he's spoken it over your life. He's given it unto you because he's redeemed you. He's loved you. He's made it available to you. He bought you with a price, and that price wasn't money. It was blood, because a superior kingdom has come and you now have access to dwell in that kingdom and live as a citizen of that kingdom forever. And so make that this week your focus. Seeking the Father with urgency and seeking him while he may be found. His word won't fail. It can't. Go read verses 11 and 10 and 11 of chapter 55. They're some of my favorite verses. Seek him while he may still be found. Okay? I love you guys. This is all I got for us today. I'll see you Sunday. We'll be finishing up the book of Isaiah, so go ahead and finish reading all the chapters. Listen, I love you, but more importantly than that, the Father loves you. Let him love you. Start before you're ready, and don't stop. I'll see you guys next time.